G'day so-and-sos and welcome to my sewing room. My name is Cathy and this is Lucy Purr, and we have another fun project for you today. So this is a Japanese knot bag. Now this was so easy to do. It's a rainy day. The cat is needing my attention. She's having a moment. So a nice, quick, easy project for today. But these are everywhere online at the moment. So something that's still very on trend. So very easy to do. There's no interfacing at all. It is just 2 pieces of fabric for the outside, 2 for the inside, and pretty much minimal sewing. It was heaps of fun to do, and I did this one today on the domestic machine. So let's just get into it. Let's get cracking. Righto, let's have a look at what we need for today. So the pattern piece is in the description box, and with all of my projects, as usual, it's free. So make sure you go there and print it out and have it ready. And then I've cut out my pattern pieces. So I have cut them out mirrored. And what that means is that this is one of my exterior pieces. The long handle is in my left hand. The short handle is in my right hand. And with the other piece, I turned the pattern piece over, I mirrored it. So now the short handle for this piece is in my left hand and the long handle is in my right hand. So make sure you cut them out mirrored for both your exterior and your lining pieces. And then I have, as always, cutting mat, scissors, acrylic ruler, some snippers, a little bit of chalk, as always, my little purple thing, some clips and some pins. So I've got my pattern pieces in front of me. Now we're not interfacing anything today. It's just straight fabric, which I think for me is a first on this channel. So what I'm going to do, pop my lining to one side and have my fabric pieces in front of me. I'm going to have it right side up and I'm going to place the other lining piece on top of it, right sides down. So they are pretty side to pretty side. And then I'm going to wax some, I might use pins today for this bit. Going to wax some pins in it down the sides. So you'll notice at the top that it's got a bit of a notch. Where the handles start, it goes in just ever so slightly. That is the bottom of our handles, where our handles start. So we're going to sew down the sides and along the bottom. We're not going to do the corners. We're going to start at these little notch bits and down the side. So on that side where the long handle is, might be easy to see. You'll see it comes down, it's got that curve and then that point. We're going to start from that point and sew down. But I'll show you again at the sewing machine if you didn't see that. So we're going to go down the sides and across the bottom. And I'm going to do the same thing to my lining. I'm going to place them right sides together and wax some pins in the same way, and we'll take it over and do it at the same time. Now I'm using all cottons for today. So the exterior piece I think is like maybe a broadcloth or something, a cotton broadcloth. It's just a little bit more of a open, rougher weave, but you can use whatever cotton you like. So just quilting cotton is fine. If you want to use a cotton duck or something like that, that's a little bit heavier, just be careful because we actually pull the bag up through one of these handles openings. So if you're using something really thick, it might be a little bit hard to wiggle that out, although I'm sure you could still do it. Okay, let's go sew down these sides and the bottoms. So I'm going to be using my domestic machine today, which is nice. I'm going to be starting right up on this corner. So there's our handle and there's that little corner piece. And I'm going to be at around 1/4 inch seam allowance. And my stitch length is around 3.5, I think. And I'm going to remember to backstitch there. I'm going to remember how to use this machine is what I'm going to do. just up to that notched area. Just to there and backstitch. Cool. Okay, so there's the sides and bottom sewn down. Now we're going to box the corners. So I'm going to grab my exterior piece, find that corner, stick my fingers in the corners and open it up. So I'm laying the side and bottom seams against each other. And I'll pop some clips on there. Now I'm pushing the side seam to my left. So the bottom seam, I'm pushing to the right and whack some clips on there. So it'll look like that. And then I'll do, don't cheat a thread. I'll do the same thing on the other side. Stick my fingers in there, open it up, place those seams together. And that bottom seam is now pushing to the left. So I'm pushing the side one to the right. If you don't get that, don't worry too much about it. I just want the seam lined up, but the actual seams going in other directions. And whack some clips on there. And I'll do the same thing to the lining. Hang on. Okay, sorry, Cat has ADHD. So, lining piece, same thing. I'm going to stick my fingers in that corner, open it up, lay the seams together, and then I'll whack some clips on there. So I'm pushing my bottom seam that way and my side seam that way. And I'll pop some clips on there. I usually wouldn't let her wander around while I'm filming, but I could hear her meowing from the house. So I'm in like a granny flat that I've got set up. And the house is maybe 15, 20 meters away and I could hear her. Okay, so other corner, same thing. Open it up, push the bottom seam the same direction as it's laying and that side seam and whack some clips on there. And then we're going to take it back over to the sewing machine and we are going to sew along these clipped edges, which will give us our boxed corners. Be very careful, don't sew across your little paws. Okay, so we're just going to sew across that clipped edge on each of our 4 corners at around 1/4 inch seam allowance. Holding that seam down as I go. Remember to backstitch, and that's our corners boxed. So now we've got our bottoms boxed. We have boxed bottoms. So I'm going to take my exterior piece and turn it the right side out, and my lining is still inside out. It's a little bit hard to tell with my lining because it's just all one color. So I'm going to take my exterior piece and I'm going to pop it into my lining piece. So they will now be right sides together, pushing them down into those corners and making sure that my long handles are on one side and my short handles are on the other side. So it will look like this. You'll see if I've got my long handle and long handle together that I've got this V bit in there. So what I'm going to do now is line up those corners, grab my ruler and my chalk, and from my lining, I'm going to measure down 2 inches from the top and give myself a bit of a chalk mark on both sides of my long handle, front and back. So when I say both sides, I mean on this side and on this side. And then I'll flip it around and do it on this side and this side as well. And then I'll do it over on the short one. So flip him over that way and measure down 2 inches. Give myself a chalk mark on either side. And then on my short side, I need that. Thank you. On my short side as well, like that. So on my short side, I don't have quite as much room to move. So I'll measure down 1.5 inches on that short side from the top. Flip him over and then 1.5 inches on the other side of my short handle. Cool. So that's what I will look like. On my long handle, I've measured down 2 inches on the left and right. On my short handle, I've measured over down 1.5 inches from the top. And then I've done that on both sides. Now I can start clipping or pinning. I need those. Thank you. So I'm going to line up my lining and my exterior on one of my long sides. And I'm going to make sure that that side seam where it's already sewn up is together. And I'll whack a pin in there if the cat will give them back. Thank you. Just to hold that in place. And then I'll line up those edges of that exterior and lining piece and whack some pins in there. On both sides of that long handle. So line them up and whack a couple of pins in. Okay, and now on the other side as well, I'll whack some in there to hold those handles together. And then same thing on the short sides. So making sure that I've got the lining and exterior pieces together, making sure they are lined up in that center seam where it's already sewn together, and whack some pins in there. And then the other side, making sure those corners line up. And then the other one. So lining and exterior together and whack some pins in there. There we go. And then that side. Cool. Now I'll whack one in along this straight edge as well on both sides. Making sure that is lined up. And then that side. Okay. Now back to the sewing machine. And what we're going to do is on these short sides, starting from the V, we're just going to sew up just that little bit to that 1.5 inch line. And then on the other side of the short handle, we're going to start at the chalk mark, come down across the front of our bag and back up to the chalk mark on the long handle. And then same thing here on this V, we're going to start at the long handle, come down the V and then up to the other side, and then start the other side of the handle at that chalk mark, come down across the front and up to that short chalk mark. So we're going to be leaving that part of the long handle and the top open, and then that 1.5 inches and the top of the short handle open on both sides of the handles. Okay, let's do that. Bloody cat, what do you got? So I'm starting on one of my long handles and I'm starting at that chalk mark. Now I told you I'm terrible at pinning because I've got all my pins on the wrong side. Doesn't matter. Okay, so starting at that chalk mark, and I'm same thing, about 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. I'm going to come down to this V with back stitch. So I'm going to come down to this V that we made, where that side seam is. Come down some on the seam, lift up my presser foot and pivot my work around. So my needle is down in my work, so it holds it still for me. And then up this side to that chalk mark. I really buggered those pins, didn't I? I'll have to fix that. And then back stitch. Okay. Now I'll start on the other side of that long handle where that other chalk mark is. Stitch. Cool. So this is what we should be looking like at this stage. Now I'm sorry if you can hear that rain, it's just started pouring down, and there is nothing lovelier than being in your sewing room when it's raining with a cat. Just heaven. Okay, so now I'm going to snip into these corners. I'm going to get my scissors and just snip up as close to those stitches in those corners as I dare. That will just free it up when we turn it out in a moment. So you can give it a couple of clips if you want, if you've done more of a curve there. But that should be fine. If you accidentally clip your stitches, go back over to your sewing machine and turn it back out again. Oh, and in these little V's as well. Just snip down to your stitches. Cool. Okay, now we can turn it out. So find one of your long handles, pop your little fingers in there and wiggle your fingers down to the bottom of the bag, grab it and start to pull. Now I'm not just yanking at my bag, I'm sliding the rest of it over it as well, because we don't want any ripped stitches at this stage. And just wiggle it all out and pop all 4 handles out. Okay, looking good. Now, I'm going to pop the lining into the exterior. So pretty. All my fabrics are from Spotlight too. I forgot to mention that. Pop those corners in. Okay, now that's what we've left with. So all of our handles are a little bit open at the top. So what I'm going to do now is start on my long handles, grab my exterior pieces, and I'm going to place my 2 exterior pieces right sides together. So pretty side to pretty side. So have another look at that. So that's the side of my bag, there's the front, there's my 2 long handles. Take those open ends, turn it sideways and place them so they're right sides together. Pretty side to pretty side. And clip that together. I'll use clips this time. Clip them together. Now the main thing that we're worrying about is the top, because that's where we're going to sew. So you want your sides lined up, but don't worry about, getting right down in that point. Absolutely perfect, because we're just going to be sewing across the top. Cool. And then same thing on the short side. So there's my V, there's that side. Take my exterior pieces and place them right sides together. And then whack some clips or some pins on there. Now, please be more mindful than me with your pinning technique. I am terrible and I really need to start doing it properly. I usually use clips, but that's no excuse. Catherine Ann, stop making excuses for yourself. Okay, so we'll take that back over to the sewing machine and we're just going to sew along the top of those exterior handles. Okay, so making sure those tops are lined up, and I'm still going to be at around that 1/4 of an inch or so. And I'm going to make sure that I remember to backstitch. That's one, and then the other one. Cool. So that's our exterior handles done. Now we're going to do the same thing with the lining. So I'm going to find my lining pieces on my long handles and fold them in so they are right sides together. So pretty side to pretty side, or the inside to the inside. If you're using fabric like me, that's the same. That doesn't have a print. So that's my lining, folding them in that way. So they are right sides together, and line up those top edges and whack some clips or some pins along there. And again, we're just going to be sewing across the top. We're not worrying about the sides. That will come in a moment. And then same thing on the short ones. So tuck your exterior handle down out of the way, get out of the way so you've got some room. Grab your lining handles and fold them in right sides together. So it'll all be a little bit twisted and a little bit messy and funny looking, and that's fine. That's how it's meant to be. We'll flip it all out once it's sewn, and then we can top stitch around and close up the sides. But don't worry about that yet. Let's just get one step at a time. So clip all them down. Okay, we'll take that over to the sewing machine and sew those along the top. And if you didn't get it, I'll show you at the sewing machine a little bit closer up. Okay, let's do that. So let's have a look. So there's our exterior pieces together. So we placed them right sides together, and we did the same with the lining. So I'm just going to show you again, just in case you didn't get it, because it can be a little bit tricky. So there's the inside of my bag and my 2 loose lining handles. Place them right sides together like that. So that's the inside of my fabric, inside of my bag, placing them together like that. And then clip along the top and work a few on the sides to hold in place. So if that had a print, it would be print side to print side. Okay, now we can stitch these down at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Just make sure that your exterior handle is down and out of the way so you're not sewing over anything that you don't want to. Cool. So there's our exterior handle and our lining handles all done. Now we're going to flip that out and then that one under and put them all together. And we'll give them a bit of a hit with the iron like that. Oh, that's cute. Now we want to iron it so our seams are tucked under like that at the same 1/4 inch that we sewed down along here, because we're going to take that over and top stitch it in a moment. So we're going to take a minute, line that up, iron it all down and whack some clips on. Now on our short side, it's quite a small little hole there. So just be careful to take your time, tuck it all in and get it all nice and neat. Okay, all the clips. Now we're going to take it back over to the sewing machine and we're going to top stitch around the handle and around the front and down around the other side and back up. And we are going to also top stitch around both holes. Now this one is small and tight, so just be careful that you don't go too wide on your seam allowance. We want to be around 1/8 of an inch all the way around. Okay, so I'm going to start on the trickiest bit, which is the small hole. So I'm going to pop it under right on that seam. And like I said, I want to be about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I'm going to make sure I use my little purple thing so I don't get my fingers anywhere near that needle. Done. So there we go. There she is, all top stitched down. And now all you do is take your long handle, slide it through the hole of your short handle, and there you go. Very cute, very fun little rainy day project with my cat. Now, as usual, if you enjoyed today, please give me a like and subscribe. And until then, I will see you next time. And hopefully the bloody cat will stay inside next time, so she's not so much of a distraction. Cute as you are. Okay, peeps, have a good one. See you next time. Bye. Bugger.